doing. It's if we actually get distracted by it and then tempted to change what we're doing and then risk diluting our own secret sauce, our own authentic secret sauce. I would say it over and over and over to the point where I could tell they probably were rolling their eyes at me. But we were clear about it, and I think it's huge.
No, I don't. People shouldn't roll their eyes at that, because I do think together, and I saw someone say there's enough in the pie for everyone, or there's enough pie for everyone. That is so very true. Just stay focused on your mission and your product and your culture. And on the culture note, you talk about how hard you worked, how many hours you were on, how you gave up weekends and holidays and nights, and there was a hotel room at one point during a snowstorm in case they wanted you to come on. Like, you sacrificed a lot. But as a leader, you also had to lead a team and create a culture within your business. So I wanted to ask you specifically, how do you as founder work that hard while not fostering a culture of burnout among everyone else who's working for you?
Yeah. And, there were personals, talk about the personal side. And, there's so many stories, literally, Mag, I've never shared them before until Believe It, because I don't want people to make the same mistakes I made, even personally in your personal life. And, there were times so here's the thing, the days when I was a Denny's waitress, I could have never imagined I would be running a company with 1,000 employees and all the success, right? And then going through 3 years of having everyone tell me that they didn't think it was going to work. And all of the retailers I dreamed of being in, whether it was QVC or Sephora, all the department stores, Ulta Beauty, the stores I love shopping and I dreamed my product would be there, but they all said no. They all said no for 3 years. And after so much rejection, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of no's. And by the way, every time I got another no, I would check in with my gut. Of course, sometimes I would cry myself to sleep. At one point, we got down to under $1,000 in our company and personal bank account combined. My husband and I would do these date nights when it was like a real special occasion, and we would go to Costco to the hot dog stand outside where you get the $1 hot dog. At least it's good. At least it's good. But it was tough for a lot of years. And every time I would check in with my gut, I just knew I was supposed to keep going. And I talk, by the way, not to get off the question, but I talk so much about this in my book, because I just want to say, for everyone listening right now, I don't believe that you need to be smarter than everyone else or even harder working necessarily than anyone else. I don't believe where you come from or even where you're at right now determines where you're going. But I do believe that when you learn how to hear yourself and trust yourself, I feel like that is one of the most important critical things to success. So a big part of Believe It is how to do that. But, after all the years of rejection, 3 years of hundreds and hundreds of no's, when we finally started getting traction in our business, in the beginning, I had a hard time believing it. And I just kept feeling like I need to strike while the iron's hot. Oh my gosh, we finally got yeses. And I started going on QVC, and it was just like another show after another show. And I drove myself so hard. I did 100-hour weeks for almost a decade. And I remember I would walk into the QVC building, and we would have 3 or 4 sets of employees doing from the cosmetics team coming in and out, doing their 8-hour shifts. And I would still have not left the building. Same with my husband, who was our co-founder. And same with our very first employee who wouldn't leave. She's just so all in. We couldn't believe the success that was happening. And because of that, I always felt like I needed to strike while the iron's hot. But honestly, I lived in burnout for almost a decade. And I do not think you need to work that many hours at all to have the outcome we had. I just think I had to go through the journey of learning to believe that my own success was real and was possible, because things were happening to me where that wasn't how I was raised, and I didn't see success like that the way you know what I mean? And I look back and I think that I pray every day it didn't take a toll on my health. I don't think you have to work that hard to have that outcome. So if looking back, that's one thing I would do differently, for sure.
But it shows the dedication. And I also think you have achieved so much. So there's a lot of other advice within the book that I want to get to. One in particular is protecting your IP. This came up, and just for any entrepreneur who's joining, you talk about why that's so important and kind of, can you give, I don't want you to give all of it away, but maybe for folks who have a product that they care deeply about, I want to just maybe one or two kernels of wisdom for them about what you learned and what you want them to know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Good stuff in the book, right, Maggie?
Yeah.
There's some crazy stories that like I held on to for years, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to share what happened because I wish I had known these lessons sooner. I would have saved myself so much time, so much money, so much worry, so much self-doubt. That's the kind of stories that I didn't believe it. But but two things. So for every entrepreneur who has an idea or a product or any IP of any form, I think protecting it is really important for two reasons. But I also think that if it's authentic to you and if your brand DNA is authentic, no one can mess with you. They can try to copy you all they want. And I've had that happen. And I talk about how devastating I thought it was and then what happened after. I talk about the legal implications when you're small and can't afford to do anything about it. I talk about all that stuff in the book. And but one thing I want to say is when it comes to IP, a lot of people when they're small don't realize they don't realize like if their outcome, right? So here'd be my advice for everyone, no matter what phase of business they're in with their own product company right now. Know what outcome you want to have. And what I mean by that is, do you want to be acquired one day? Do you want to go public one day? Or do you just want to keep something inside and grow it and enjoy it? But if you want to be acquired one day, or you want to bring on outside investment one day, every detail about your company is going to get scrutinized. And a big part of what people are investing in or placing a value on is your IP and what you own and all of that. And I think a big piece of advice is know where you want to go, whether that's in 2 years or 20 years. Know what you have to do to make that happen at that moment. Know what has to happen for an acquisition to go through, right? Anyone who's ever gone through the acquisition process and the diligence process knows the stars have to align. All the I's have to be dotted and the T's need to be crossed. So what are those I's and T's in your own industry, right? And then back it up to where you're at now and start doing those things now. Start putting that foundation in now, because most acquisitions never happen. Most outside investment, like there's interest and then it never happens, right? There are so many things that you can do now to ensure that it does happen when that time comes. And so just to give you an example, when we got outside investment eventually, when we were acquired by L'Oreal, you need to own all your formulas. You need to own all of not just your formulas, but your batch recipes for how everything is made. But when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, you don't know all those things. And you can get to the finish line just about of an acquisition and have it fall through for any one of these things not being in place. And the other problem, Maggie, is when you do these things later, let's say you wait till you're a much bigger company and then you start trying to make sure you own your IP and own your formulas. Well, then people don't want to give them to you because now they don't want to lose you as a client. They don't want to lose you. They don't want you to take your formula and go somewhere else and make it. So when you are small, when you are under the radar, when you're starting out, that ironically is when you have the best chance because no one cares yet about your business. You're not making them any money yet. That's your best shot at lining up all of your IP, of making sure you own your formulas and own all of your stuff and get all that stuff in a row before anyone cares. And then by the time you get to that place where you're ready for acquisition, you're ready for outside investment, you have all that stuff there.
It's so important to know your value and to not doubt it. And that gets to the core of this book, right? Believe in yourself, believe in what you're building. For those who are just joining, we have Jamie Kern Lima, founder of It Cosmetics, talking about her new book. We are going to go to the questions. I'm going to see what questions we have.
Okay, great.
But this is a good one. How is your organization surviving economically during the pandemic? It's been hard for a lot of leaders.
Yeah, it's been hard for a lot of people. So, in my journey, we were acquired by L'Oreal in 2016, And it was amazing because instantly we were able to take our passion, our mission, and start launching companies globally. And after they bought 100% of It Cosmetics, I gave them my word I would stay on for 3 years. And in the first 2 years, we doubled the size of the business. And then about a year and a half ago, and this is something I want to share to everyone listening. I think our victory in life isn't the outcome of our business. I don't think it's the outcome of where we're at right now. I don't think it's any of that. I think it's when we listen to our truth and we follow it. And so, about almost 2 years ago, I just had this really strong feeling that the teams and It Cosmetics and everything L'Oreal was doing with the company was so smooth and was just like in such a great spot. The mission was expanding globally. And so I had this really strong knowing that it was time for me to step away and to literally, I started writing Believe It right then. I was like, how can I take everything? By the way, I don't know if I shared that I'm donating 100% of the proceeds from the book, by the way, to Feeding America and Together Rising. So 100% of my author proceeds are being donated. But I literally, Maggie, had this feeling like, okay, this baby I birthed in my living room, It Cosmetics, has grown to the largest luxury makeup company in the country. The team is incredible. L'Oreal is doing amazing things with the company. I'm like, I just had this feeling it's time to take everything I've gone through and try to be of service in however I can, donating 100% of the proceeds of the book. But I feel like when we use everything we've gone through to be of service to other people, it's when we get our true fulfillment. So I stepped away from the company about a year and a half ago and wrote this whole book. So right now through the pandemic, from everything I know of, obviously every company across the country and every personal individual, but also every leader is going through a really, really tough time. It's a tough time personally for people because so many people are having to be teachers for the first time ever, homeschooling kids, trying to navigate it all, trying to deal with their own personal divisions happening inside families, and trying to deal with being a leader and showing up for people at the same time. So I think the past 14 months has been the toughest time for a lot of people in their entire life. They face more uncertainty as leaders inside their businesses, inside their teams, and inside their own homes, all happening at the same time. And so it is, 14 months of a tough time. And I think that everyone's doing the best that they can with what they have. And I think that, at this point in time, the blessing with everything happening is I think we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that even the strongest leaders I know who lead huge teams and huge companies have started dimming their own light in a way because it's been so heavy and it's been so much. And so I think why I love what you're doing at Forbes, why I love these lives, even of Ask the Experts, and I think it's important right now, even as leaders, to learn to ask for help and to learn to come together in connection, in community, to feel less alone, because a lot of people are feeling alone in our struggles. And a lot of times when someone's a leader, when they're the boss, when they're the founder of the company, when they're the leader of the team, they try to hide all the stuff that they are struggling with. They try to hide when they're feeling like they're failing at a lot of things. And a lot of leaders right now are feeling like they're failing at a lot of things because everyone's feeling that way, because that's what's happening inside our own homes. So I think the most important thing is doing things right now that help you feel less alone and more like, okay, we're all in this together. We're all going through this time of uncertainty together, and taking care of yourself personally, I think, is the most important thing right now. And the other thing I'll say is that energy is contagious, right? Like a big reason I wrote this book, Believe It, is I feel like there's never been a better time like for a book like this to come out, because with people dimming their light for so long, it's like it's time to ignite that light again. It's time to to reignite it. It's time to really believe and live with anticipation and hope again, and to really truly not only just believe in yourself, trust yourself, but have that energy as a leader or as a boss be contagious to your teams, because it has to start with you first. And then it becomes contagious to your team. So I think there's never been a better time for Believe It. And also I just commend every single human being going through this time right now, because it's tough on everybody.
It truly is across all my group texts. I think no matter what you're doing, it's difficult in different ways.
Yeah.
We got
And bosses feel like they have to hide it. Bosses feel like they have to hide those things and they have to show up and be strong for their teams. And so it's an extra layer of pressure too for everybody.
for sure. There was a very practical question, I think, from someone who might want to write the book. How did you stay on track with writing? I think that's my perpetual struggle. I think 2 a.m. can be a good time to write, and other days it's 10 a.m. But what was your process like? Did you have like a set time or a set place where you wrote this?
Yeah, it was fun to see where that creativity came. I know some people are night owls. I was a morning person. I literally couldn't write after like 1 in the afternoon. So I would be up in the morning and it would just flow, like everything would just flow. And it's tough, writing your story. Writing your story is a personal thing for everybody, but I think every single person has a story that matters. I think that I think when we share it, it's how we, help everyone else lift up. It's how we do something bigger than ourselves. And I think that it's one of the most incredible experiences for anybody to go through is writing. And listen, there's some tough stories in this book. It's not just a journey of starting in my living room and building $1 billion company or having $1 billion exit. It's also a journey of really, how do you overcome self-doubt? How do you break through those barriers? There's stories, as you know, Maggie, in the book, of investors saying, no one will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And every one of us have had somebody look into our eyes and tell us we're not enough. And this book is about, what do you do when that happens to you? And how do you break through it? And so it's really for everyone in that, who wants to do that too.
So agree. And like I said, I don't want to give it all away. I highly recommend that everyone watching read this if you haven't already. I've seen some people who have been commenting that it's so authentic and so real. So it seems like some of the folks you mentioned at the beginning who've already read through it are on here now. So I'm impressed at how fast you guys are at reading. It's quite impressive. We've had you.
And it's amazing too with Audible nowadays too, because like I have people saying they listen to the whole thing in the first day. I'm like, wow, it's 10 hours on Audible. I'm like, wow. So listen, people need hope. So many of us need hope and we need inspiration. And I think like this is honestly, it's a true underdog story. Like for anyone who feels like they're struggling in their business right now, they're not getting the traction that they want to see, or they're just dealing with rejection and want to figure out how to become more resilient. Believe it's definitely for you. So.
Well, I could talk to you all day, but I'm going to have to let you go soon. But I don't want to have you leave without me asking about something that you write towards the end of the book. And I'm not going to give it all away, but you hit on something that I think is really important. You talk about how you didn't love the word richest when we came out with the richest self-made woman list. And you changed it in your bio to most successful until you realized, wait, no, I'm going to embrace the word richest. There's huge power in other girls and women seeing me, a self-made woman who started with virtually no money, on the Forbes richest self-made women's list. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of women owning their power, even if it's in the uncomfortable area of talking about wealth and money?
Yeah, it was a big epiphany for me, Maggie. When I was first named on the Forbes richest self-made women's list, I literally instantly replied and said no. And my head of PR said, no, Jamie's not interested in being part of the story, doesn't want to comment, all of that. And I realized, and this took me a few years, as women, so many of us are learned to like play it small and call it being humble and call it humility. And we learn to bond over problems like, oh, my pants don't fit, my house is a mess, I'm a hot mess. Like we learn to literally dim our light to get belonging. And I realized that by so many well-intended women, that's how I was raised by friends, family, etc. And I realized that's what I was doing in my own life. I realized, wait a minute. And by the way, the funniest thing, I talk about this also. Yeah, I see a lot of people in the comments saying, heck yes, right? How many of you guys bond over problems, right? Seriously, think about it. And then this was so funny, Maggie, that in the process of learning, finding out, like when I was working at Denny's, could I have ever imagined I would be on the Forbes richest self-made women's list? Like, right? but then when it happened, I almost like, panicked at the beginning, because I was like, oh no, no, like, and I'll never forget, the reporter on your team said to me, oh, it's okay that you don't want to comment about it or you don't want to share. She's like, that actually, we hear from a lot of women on the list that they don't want to, talk about their net worth or anything else. And she goes, and it's kind of funny because with men, it's the opposite. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she goes, well, a lot of times men actually call and complain. They want their number higher, and they try to give proof that it's higher and they should have more and they should be higher on the list. And I'm like, that's so fascinating. And as time went on, exactly what you said, anytime it would come up, I would do a big keynote speech at this massive event, and they would have my bio that would say Forbes Richest Self-Made Women's List. And I would ask them to change it to Forbes Most Successful Self-Made. But then I had this big epiphany that for me, all growing up, I would watch Oprah every single day in my living room. And I would watch her unapologetically shine her light. And she helped me believe that where I come from doesn't determine where I'm going. And I realized, wait a minute, if I dim my light, if I hide that I'm on the Forbes list, which I had done for a few years in a row, if I hide this, then all I'm doing is potentially robbing other little girls of seeing a self-made woman and thinking, oh, that's possible for me too. I might be robbing other women right now waitressing at Denny's that maybe have an entrepreneurial dream too. I might be robbing them of thinking, oh, that's possible for me too. And I realized I was dimming my light and calling it being humble and thinking that was the right thing to do. And so it was a big mindset shift for me. And I talk a lot about that in the book, about, especially as women and just as anyone who dims our light, like how do we learn to, instead of dimming it, how do we learn to shine it brightly and give other women permission to do the same, and other little girls an example, and people everywhere. It's not just girls and women, people everywhere, an example about how they should shine their light too. They shouldn't dim it and call it humble, because we're signaling to everyone else how they should be as well. So thank you, by the way, thank you for having me. And this is such a big moment, like literally Believe It just launched. I feel so blessed and grateful. It just hit #1 in new releases on Amazon and #1 on Barnes and Noble. And it's just been a wild last 48 hours. And I'm honored to share about Forbes in the book too, and just about that process and that journey, like from the behind the scenes version, because I think that it's universal lessons that everyone hopefully can apply in their real life right now, to help them go from underestimated, and sometimes we are the ones underestimating ourselves, to unstoppable in your own life. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for writing it. And for everyone watching, the book is Believe It. You can get it on Bookshop or your local independent bookstore or Audible. And Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy this week with the book launch. Please celebrate, and we will talk to you soon.
Maggie, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to everyone at Forbes, so much too as well. So thanks for celebrating women too.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.